With that, I'm going to kick it off to our speaker today. Our topic for the 21st of January is convincing senior management to elevate records management into strategic information governance. And Mark, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because when I see you on the programs, you do such a great job. But I will have your slide up here for you while you're kicking off.
Well, thank you very much, Beth. And equally important, thank you for having me here. Let me get shared here, and I think I'm sharing correctly. And we just see my slides. We don't see any other windows. Is that correct?
I got it. Yep.
Okay. So, hey, I appreciate that. Good to have not only the Wisconsin folks here. Everybody's pretty cold. We're really cold here in South Carolina. It got to like 32 degrees today, and I'm sure I'm with you for
Mark.
the Wisconsin folks.
Yes.
Very popular. I'm going to talk about what's probably if I look at all the skills in the world of records management or information governance, what is the hardest thing that we have to do? What is the most sought after skill, or what's the area? And that is, how do we actually convince senior management not only to well, I'm going to start, how do we get senior management to pay attention to records management? How do we get senior management to care about records management? How do we get senior management to not cut back and actually fund records management? And maybe how do we get them to think about having a bigger role? And this is something that everybody, you talk to a lot of people and it's like, wow, I'm having a tough problem here getting senior management to be able to recognize this. Um, I think everybody sort of faces these issues. And so, there's a risk here. You attend InfoNext or InfoCon, or you talk to other people, and it feels like everybody in the world, their management embraces information governance. And I don't think that's true. And be careful. You're looking at a limited data set out there. So I'm going to talk today about what we've seen allows organizations or records management information governance professionals to really get the ear of senior management. And I think most of you know me. Contoural is the largest independent provider of information governance and records management consulting services. I'm going to talk about technologies here a little bit. We work with about 30% of the Fortune 500, plus many mid-sized organizations, many small enterprises, many public sector, and actually quite a few nonprofits. And so we do more of this, and we're just a consulting firm, a strategic consulting firm, but we do more of this than really just about anybody else out there. And as I alluded to, I'm going to talk about some products today, but we don't sell any products. We don't store any documents. We don't do any e-discovery. We're just pure strategic consulting, and nor do we actually take any referral fees. And so the opinions you're going to hear are just that, opinions, what we see works and what we see does not work with different products out there. So, and as we go through, feel free to ask questions, or either if you want to ask a question or put something in the chat. Hey, we saw this work. This did not work. Yes, I'm facing that. No, I did. No, this doesn't make sense to me. The more we can make this a discussion, the better. And I'm going to actually maybe have some awkward pauses in the middle of the presentation, encourage people to be able to ask questions as we go through. So the first statement I'm going to make, and you can agree or disagree with this, is that I think it's feeling like 2026, that there's sort of this cold wind of financial change blowing through the world of records management and information governance. And it feels a little bit like we're on the defensive. Not only is it hard to get a lot of organizations to expand, but in some cases, senior management just views records management as an expense. And, between the tariffs or, a lot of public sector organizations, are looking at challenges out there. Uh, to get funding, or other groups out there, and to be honest, quite a few RIM groups feel very vulnerable. And I don't know if anybody wants to raise their hand or put on the chat or say, I mean, does this resonate with anybody? And if not, that's okay. If not, that's great. I'm happy for you, but you're not alone. And I end up talking to a lot of people out there, and they're sort of feeling, hey, I felt like we were making ground. And we were talking during the networking event, how, we used to be larger, but we're smaller. And how do we reverse that trend? Well, first of all, how do we stop and reverse that trend to be able to do that? And so I'm going to give you a thesis. My thesis today is you don't want to be reactive towards the world of information, records management. We just don't want to say, well, but I need this. I'm going to actually say, let's go on the offensive. And let's not only go after records management as we know it, but a larger information governance programs. And I'm going to talk about some of these themes too as we go through. How do we communicate the right way? How do we show this is doable? Um, how do we show that we're driving a larger corporate initiative? And probably most important is instead of just talking about it or trying a thing, and the risk is sometimes we'll try a thing and that doesn't work, or we, sulk into the corner. Let's have a strategy. Um, let's really think about how to do this. And by the way, if we were to rate the talks on there, I would definitely consider this an advanced topic. If you're a director level or a vice president level in your organization, these are issues you deal with all day. If you're, on a manager level, you're probably thinking that. Or if you're just an individual contributor, you may not face these issues, but I think it's very important to really understand how as an organization do we move forward and do this. Okay.
Hey, hey Mark,
Yep,
we have a
please.
request. Could you adjust how your view is so that it's got your slides a little bit bigger? I think
Let me take this out. Does that work?
if you
Hey,
some
let me stop. Let me try stopping share. Thank you for interrupting
yeah.
me. Let me try one
Yeah.
more time. Oh, I think I tried this. Tell me if it's better. I'm sharing the screen. Hold it. Better or
Uh
no?
it's the same. Is there an option to change like where your picture is?
Are you
We
seeing
see
the all the slides, or are you seeing the whole list of slides, or just the slide in presentation mode?
just the slide in presentation mode, but it has your a second picture for you for like your video just along the side too. So it's making the slide deck a little bit
Okay,
small.
let's see if we can fix that. Hold on 1 second.
I think it's a Zoom thing.
And it feels like, oh, tell me if it gets better. I'm moving some windows around here. That's not there. That's not there. And do I have any other Zoom stuff out here? Let me move the Zoom workplace. No, that's there. Is it still blocking it?
It's not blocking it, but maybe it's good enough as it is. I know some of the viewers, you can adjust how it looks in your view menu a little bit.
Let me
Um,
take a quick, let me get to the thing real quickly to get to the view menu here.
Folks recommend using the standard view for those
Yeah,
that are
I
watching.
think I may have messed that up. That may be pilot error. Hold on 1 second. Um, and let me go here 1 second.
Oh,
Sorry,
pro tip,
everybody.
you can also click and scroll up to zoom in on the slide deck, folks, too. That's a good tip.
Well, I think I presented it for myself, but hold on 1 second. And layout is what I want to do. And if I just content only, does that fix it better?
That looks great for me. So yep, looks like chat's doing better too. So thanks so
All
much,
right.
Mark.
Sorry
Appreciate
about
it.
that. I
No
was
worries.
okay. And it's like I never use Zoom.
It looks great.
All right. Uh, okay. Here's the caveat. You can do everything the right way. Well, first of all, there's no formula. Every organization's different. And what worked extremely successful for organization could possibly fail miserably in someplace else or vice versa. And so there's no formula. Second of all, it can take time. Occasionally, this can go very quickly, but it may take a while to be able to do that. Third of all, I'm going to challenge you today. I'm going to possibly have you rethink traditional approaches to records management. Because I'm going to be a little blunt here. Maybe that's what's holding you back. And likewise, engaging in new ways. And still, you can do everything right, and it still may not work. And so again, I say, this is sort of the advanced topic within information governance. And this stuff is just hard. It really is. It really is. And so maybe we can take solace in there. However, we have worked, and I've seen a lot of organizations that at one point they quite frankly didn't get a lot of respect or didn't get a lot of support or didn't get a lot of funding that took some of these steps and actually now do. So I think I should say the final mistake is it will never be able to fix that. I think that's wrong. I think we have to be smart in how we work at it. So by all means, let us know how we do that. We have a question here. How do we get senior management to reverse the trend of holding on to information just in case? We're going to talk about that. That's a great question. Um, well, actually, let's let's. Are you asking senior management? That was a great setup question. Are you messaging employees are saving too many files and emails? Are you telling management we need more budget? Or we need to get the darn employees to just follow our records management processes. We've got the processes, we just need them to follow them. Or by the way, we need IT to do their work to be able to do that, or we need the records team needs more headcount. And have you had these messages before that are falling on deaf ears? And I'd be interested to say if somebody uh, is doing that. And if you've said these things, if you've railed against over retention, and we know the issues with over retention, we know the problem with too many files and emails, or holding on to data, or the just in case part of it. But if we said the same thing for a while now and it's not working, we need to find something else. And so, and I'm not evaluating the correctness of these messages or whether somebody should actually really argue, hey, we have to be able to do this um, out there. But you know, if not, try something different and be honest with yourself. The other thing I'm going to say is sometimes there's a frustration out there is why do I have to put the messages differently? I mean, they should get this. We know that we have to follow the law. We have legal and regulatory requirements. We run into these problems. How come I have to explain it? How come they don't get it? And I'm just going to say sorry. Again, by the way, I'm going to talk a little bit of tough love here, but we got to get over it. As information governance professionals or records managers, if the current messaging isn't worked, and even though if it should work and we shouldn't have to explain it and it doesn't work, honestly evaluate it and let's just get over it. Let's try something else. Um, and the mark of I work with a number of very smart, very talented clients, and really one of the mark of I've got some clients that are really good at saying, hey, how does this work and how does it not work and what are people doing and that. And likewise, don't focus on deleting your definition of redundant, obsolete, or trivial data. Um, if your message is, hey, we want to delete 40% of emails or 60% of emails or so many unstructured data or even paper documents, I'm going to make this argument. Outside records management and possibly IT and legal today, most don't really care about it. I mean, they don't because they don't really feel the problems with that. And I see a lot of the discussions on how to convince senior management is let's talk about rot. Let's build a business case, and if that's not working, we really have to segue to something else and be smarter about that. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Sometimes my company would message certain departments differently because of the audience. It makes them feel special. I love it. I want everybody to feel special. And if I have to sort of, and I'm going to use this word loosely, it may feel like pandering, but that's okay. Hey, I'm going to be smarter, and I'm going to reach them with whatever messages we want to be able to message. But again, this has been traditionally the last 10 years, the definition of rot. And some organizations get it. For some organizations, this is a huge driver, but a lot they're not. And so we may need to think about something different. Um, so let's go from what doesn't work to what we do see works. And I think one of the key, most important areas is engaging multiple stakeholders. And actually, we already talked about this ahead of time. Um, talk to legal. or maybe you're part of legal. Make sure we engage privacy or compliance or IT or information security, or if data governance is a separate group, or risk or audit. Definitely HR, finance, and the business units. And what we want to do is explain how what we want to do will help them. How do we make legal more productive? How do we make the business units more collaborative? How will finance be able to find its stuff? How can we drive information security? I was um, just on the phone yesterday we had a whole team with the information security folks. Actually, we had legal and the CIO, and we're talking to the information security folks, and we were talking about how good information governance will help drive information security. Um, be an ambassador, reach out to these groups, sort of go out there, if you will, and find the win for them and all these different groups, and what works for them, to be able to do that. And so the win the win for each individual group may be a little bit different, but they're win, but put it in their terms, not your terms, to be able to do that. And this sometimes takes some creative, and actually I'm going to go back a slide. It may be, hey, what are you trying to solve? What are you trying to do? Somebody mentioned, hey, what's your roadmap? What issues trying to solve? Maybe we find out ahead of time what their initiatives are going to be, or what their pain points are, and then fit what we're trying to do in RIM and information governance into their pain points. This takes a lot of time. It really does. And clearly, there's going to be, let's be honest, sometimes corporate politics come into this, or territorialism, or this is mine, or are you looking for my budget suspicion? Um, but if you get really good at this, at being a good ambassador and reaching out, this very, very important. And conversely, I've seen very, very few records programs be successful that didn't do this. I don't want to say 100%, but darn near 90% of the time, if we see a good records program, we know somebody in the organization has done a very good job of bridging multiple stakeholders. Um, by the way, I'm going to pause to see if anybody has any questions, as I promised to be. Is this making sense? I'm just looking at some of these comments out here. Make sure that we can do that. Anybody have any question in particular? This is the pause I'm talking about. Put yourself. All right. I'll let everyone go this time. All right. And I'm going to talk about something slightly different, but very subtle. We have a group of stakeholders that I just talked about. Sometimes senior management, um, they have a different need or concern or win. Um, started engaging with a company about 8 months ago, and we were talking illegal, we're talking information security and IT, and we need a good records program, and we need to be able to do this and get rid of stuff. And finally, I got on the phone and I spent half an hour with the CEO, and 7,000 person company, and he spent a lot of time with me. And what do you care? The first question for him was, how can I help you? Or where are you trying to take your organization? What can you do? His pet peeve is that they had a breach, and they wanted to go out and really cure the breach, if you will. And that was his driver. Um, Sometimes it's something else. Sometimes it is, hey, we've got to reduce the cost of e-discovery. Sometimes it's employer productivity and collaboration. It's going to be different, but senior management can have a different win than the stakeholders. And if you can discern what senior management win is, that's going to be very important. And likewise, every time that we communicate what we're doing in the program, how our things are going, we're always going to make sure that we tie in senior management's, hey, and this will allow us to clean up sensitive information, or better protect it or secure it. So they feel like their need is really being addressed. And again, sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's the GC or the CFO, but a lot of times they got this. And again, sometimes it's a level above that. I have a comment here. It's a shame a breach needs to happen before senior management pay attention. Yes, to some extent, I'm going to agree, but I'm also going to say I I want to be a little bit careful with the narrative here. I don't want us to say, hey, they should have figured this stuff out ahead of time, or how come we have to do this? I'm going to put that back on us as records managers or information governance professionals to sort of communicate and show why we're valuable. In other words, I don't want to sort of approach them with a chip on my shoulder saying, you should have figured this out ahead of time, but I'm going to go and help you out for this other things. And even if you're not saying that, sometimes you subtly communicate that, and they sort of pick that up sometimes. So again, um, I listen carefully, find out what senior management wants. Um, I'm dealing with a life sciences company, and actually next week we're talking to a very large group of stakeholders, and the senior management win for them is they want more maturity. They're a fairly large organization, but they have fairly immature, and they want a part of their overall initiative is they want better compliance, they want better risk, but they just want better maturity, and that's actually a big driver for senior management. And so obviously we're going to be able to communicate that. I've got a comment here. As a government records management, we tried to raise awareness about IG to leadership by the amount of resources to produce and react to FOIA public records requests and the costs and risks of overtraining. But we finally got senior leadership to pay attention when we changed the sales pitch to privacy and security. Great comments there. And don't focus on what it should be. Focus on what their concern is out there and what's going to resonate out there. The other thing I'm going to say is both engaging senior stakeholders and senior management. Um, if I talk about how, we're do better privacy, or we're going to have more maturity, or we're going to, clean up sensitive information, part of me be going, hey, remember, I'm in records management. What about my records management program? Are we forgetting about the needs of my records management program? And my comment is, don't worry. Let's put our records management, hopes and desires. Let's not put on the back burner, but let's not highlight that. That's okay. When we figure out the cleanup or deleting or minimizing personal information or compliance or facilitating M&A or whatever it needs to be, don't worry. We'll come along for the ride. We're not forgetting what we need. We don't have to highlight that saying, oh, and by the way, we have to do, we have to be better compliance with records management. It will come along. How we do this is very important. It's difficult not to take the lack of prioritizing personally. That's very true. Thank you very much. But I find that it's true that we're not framing the risk through the lens of specific unit or exec. That's exactly right out there. Um, and again, we want to be able to shop around, if you will. What's your risk? What's your pain? What's your risk? What's your pain? Which goes back to the idea. Let's engage other stakeholders. Let's go talk to them. And again, listen. When I talk to clients, one of the first conversations I have with them is and actually I have some clients on this call. When I'm talking to them, I say, hey, suppose we're talking 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, or 9 months from now, and suppose we had done the project and you said, wow, this is really good. It worked really well. And then I turn to the client, I say, how would you finish that session, that sentence? How would you finish that? How would you say it was good because? Because I want to hear from them what good means. And you'd be surprised the quality of the information you get associated with that. And so that tends to be very important. Um, um, Another comment, are you highlighting the risks in the business, such as PII stored in various places, AI used to shadow AI, et cetera? Those are all good drivers. And I like the idea of risk, although I'll say, is it all about risk? Maybe it's not always about risk, but I'll get to that in a second. All right. If I'm going to talk again, and obviously you're getting my opinion, I think one of the biggest hindrances of records programs today is they have too narrow definition of what is a record. Um, the traditional definition of record is something that is supported by a legal and regulatory requirement. And obviously that's foundational to what we do, but that's not exclusive. Increasingly, organizations are defining records also on business value. Um, and And we see a lot of organizations with we call old-fashioned records retention schedules um, that only have the legal and regulatory requirements and not the business value. We think that one of the paths to get greater acceptance and support and funding of your records management program is expanding the definition. So we keep both the legal and regulatory requirements, but we also identify the high value information and make that accessible. And I think a lot of the hindrances that organizations face, sometimes the reluctance to remove rot, well, your rot may not be their rot, redundant, obsolete, or trivial. And I think it really hinders us to be able to do that. So we're seeing that. Now, for those of you with public sector, you're going to say, well, our requirements are dictated by statutory requirements in the state. And I'm going to say yes, but you're not limited to just that. You can have both the statutory requirements, but you can also define what is high value information and declare that a record, even if there's not a legal and regulatory requirement associated with this. And so this is, by the way, one of the big switches that we've seen in the world of records management over the last 10 years is organizations are creating more modern compliant records management programs. And this has a big impact on how we execute and what we're going to be able to do. Um, if germane conversation, what are your thoughts on, I'm by the reading a comment here, on the tension between records professionals and management and users? I think, actually, good question. It seems the tension has grown. I'm going to argue the reason there's a tension out there is the business people want business value. They have important stuff that we're not accounting for, and we're focusing too narrowly. And this creates, to some extent, an artificial tension. And the final thing I'm going to add to this is um, most organizations that we deal with, that we see, have over retention, especially of electronic information. And if you're an organization that you say your issue is under retention, um, you're a rarity. Most organizations have too much electronic, and I'm not at all advocating oversaving or having too much information. And here's the crazy thing. If you define your legal and regulatory your record as both having a legal and regulatory requirement as well as business value, and you have in your schedule business value, you're going to be more successfully to execute. You're going to have less hoarding, and those organizations actually have less over retention than those that define it just on legal and regulatory requirements. I know that's counterintuitive. How come we expand the scope of what's a record, but we still save less? And we'll talk about that, but I think that's very true. And so we're not giving up on over retention. Actually, we're by defining that is smarter to be able to do that. Um, Another comment, we emphasize the business value of our records because it caused everyone to over retain their records because I think almost everything they've done is considered business value. Well, um, and again, there's a whole nother webinar in there. I'm going to say that goes back to your records retention schedule. Part of creating a modern, compliant records retention schedule is defining business value in the schedule and building a consensus with the business units. And yes, some users are going to say, well, I need everything forever. Okay, but the art of this is how do we suss through? And how do we find out what you really need? And how do we get to agreement on this? And I'm going to save it till a little bit later, but we also want to make sure that we message correctly on this. Well, actually, I can talk about this now. I'm going to dovetail this onto this. What do I do if that user still says, hey, I want to save all my stuff forever because I need it? Do you know that you're hurting yourself? See, if we save everything forever, we have so much clutter, we can't find the important stuff. And I've talked on other webinars how, if you have a garage full of stuff, and I've used this example before, I thought I was being helpful, and I I went out there and I bought a new Christmas tree stand, and we had this really overcrowded garage. And my wife says, we have one in the garage. We do. We had so much clutter, I couldn't even find stuff. And so the messaging we want to make is, hey, let's save the valuable information, but let's delete the clutter that gets in the way of that valuable information. And that's what your message should be. And again, that should be reflected in our view in creating a modern records retention schedule. And so, again, I warned you, I'm going to challenge our thinking on a little this. If we can go through and make the valuable information, classify valuable information, again, both on legal and regulatory requirements and business value, and those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive by any means, and we could make that more accessible, we can have a huge impact on productivity. And the average employee spends 6 hours per week searching for information. In disorganized environments, we got stuff on file shares. Maybe we've got stuff in M365 that's sort of sprawling all over the place. If we can get stuff more organized, we can save on average 3 hours per week per employee. Um, Now, some employees are going to save less than that. Some are going to save more. If it's a super organized employee, they're not they their savings, their time savings can be less. But if it's a disorganized employee, more. And I also argue that this is hard to measure. It's a little bit squishy to measure, but it's absolutely real. And so going to senior management, maybe the pitch is we have stuff all over the place. We have extra copies. We have over retention of too much clutter. We think we can save 3 hours per employee per week. Is that something you're interested in? Yes. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, 3 hours per week, that's a huge cost savings. And they're going to next ask us, how do we do this and how do we make sure that this is effective and other things like that. But you understand how we're pivoting from, oh, they don't listen to me to, or, and again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be tough, but I want to I want to talk amongst us. This is just amongst us. Um, hey, let's be smart about it. Let's do this. Let's message the right way that will be productive. And again, no guarantees this will be productive, but this is where we find management starts saying, yeah, I get this. This is really important, especially from work from home environments and especially or hybrid environments in the world of overretention. And maybe one of your organization's overall themes this year, maybe what your CEO's objectives is we have to do more with less. We're on a more limited, resources, so we do more for less. Hey, I can help you on that. I think I can make us more productive, because what information access is a huge driver for employees to be productive. So I can help you, Mr. and Ms. CEO, to be able to drive the theme on this, if that's making sense as we go through. And so it's again, it's a little bit of a different feeling on this. Um, I'm going to keep on going with more suggestions. Thank you for all the comments on this. I appreciate those. Keep those coming. And by the way, it's okay to disagree with me. We're all, seasoned information governance professionals. So, but by any means, I don't want to I don't want to, let's make this a discussion back and forth. And again, the message is different things will work for different organizations. There's a whole variety of things. What's something else that tends to work pretty well? One of our favorite activities is to benchmark among peers. We'll go in and we'll look at um, where an organization is. We'll also say what the recommended state, but we'll sometimes throw in the peer average. We'll go look at peer companies, um, be able to do this. And why is benchmarking peers and showing that to senior management important? Well, let's be honest. We think that we're plain spoken in talking about records management, information governance, but a lot of times senior management, they're sort of nodding their heads, but they don't really quite get what we do. And we're saying, hey, we need to update the policy, or we need to, do a data placement strategy. And they go, okay, they don't quite understand it. However, if I can show them their peers are doing this thing, and sometimes, here's the potential list of companies that it comes from, that's going to give them pause because, a lot of times, we want to be better. If we're competing in a marketplace, we want to be better than other, our peers. We want to be competitive, but there's a lot of respect. You really have to respect your peers. And they're no dummies. Yeah, if our peers are doing this, why are they doing it? Maybe something that we should to do. And so we often find that this is a pretty powerful message out there when you go and benchmark against the peers and get them to be able to understand that. And it takes a little bit of work to be able to do this um, out there. And so we see that. All right, I'm looking for more questions. Um, Michelle's talking corporate sustainability is what we're seeing more and more companies are focused on as well. If corporate sustainability is a big driver for your organization, it's something that the senior management wants to do. Again, the better we can tie into that, the better. I had one client that she was revamping her records program and she couldn't get anybody concerned about the records program. But she noticed one of the corporate initiatives was innovation because they really wanted to be more innovative. And so she actually turned the records program into an employee innovation program. And the way we make employees more innovative is we identify the high value information and make it accessible to everybody. And we take away the low value information so we can make it more innovative. And there's going to be some of you who are saying, hold on a second, that's just the old records program dressed up. Yeah, but it's still true. I mean, she was right. Actually, it does drive a lot of innovation. That's okay. And and by the way, she didn't go, oh, well, you should have got me the first time when I talked about no, she was very good and very smart. And actually she was pretty dang successful with that and got a lot of buy-in fairly quickly, in part because it tapped into what the corporate initiatives. If you work for a corporation, one of the best places to look to see how I should align my records management information governance program is look at the CEO's letter to the shareholders. And usually the CEO will talk about what are initiatives this following year. Maybe it's the company meeting. If you work for public sector, undoubtedly your director is trying to take your organization in a particular direction. We worked with one state agency where they really wanted the agency to become more modern. And so we tapped into what the director of the agency was saying. If you're with a nonprofit or law firm, again, the themes are out there. We just want to make sure we can listen carefully. All right. What's another key component to this is we've got to make records management easy. Um, Traditional records management processes are too hard or too time consuming for employees to follow. And if we suggest a records management process that is too time consuming or too difficult, not only will employees blow it off, but we're not going to get buy-in for senior management. And they may not say, oh, well, I know you want to do this and this and this, but I think it's going to take too long when we actually have this operational for employees to comply with the records processes, so we're not going to fund it. They're going to sort of say, well, something doesn't feel right, or I'm not sure we need to fund that, or this doesn't make sense to me. We are big believers in the 5-second rule. Um, if your records management information governance processes take longer than 5 seconds, most employees are going to blow off your processes, not because they're bad employees, but because they have their day jobs to do. So the entire records management process, from looking up the records retention schedule to classifying the document to doing drop down classification to putting it someplace to adding metadata, the entire process can't take longer than 5 seconds, um, which really means we need to highly automate this. Um, and again, this is part of a whole nother presentation, but we talk about using Microsoft 365, and there's some effort there, but you can teach Microsoft 365 all of the rules. And here's a finance employee, and again, this is part of a larger presentation where we drag and drop, by the way, there's more SharePoint sites and team sites and OneDrive than this, but either drag something into tax records or general records or AP records, and all I have to do is drag and drop it, and then the system applies all the rules. Um, you can do this with E3 or G3 version of Microsoft 365 today. This is many organizations are doing this, and this works well. It is some effort to be able to set this up, but we've helped hundreds of thousands companies deploy this for hundreds of thousands of employees. It is very doable. But more important, we want to say, hey, what we want to do is doable. It's something that we as an organization can do. And matter of fact, it leverages the technology that we own today. That message of saying we're using the version of Microsoft 365 we own today, the E3 version, will get IT engaged, because a lot of times IT is worried about, oh, are they going to ask us to buy new products or technology? And we explain to IT, no, actually, let's use Microsoft 365. And again, there's a whole bunch of caveats around there. Not everything should belong in Microsoft 365. There's going to be other repositories out there. That if we still have to address paper and structured data, and again, I'm giving you sort of simplified, but what the message here is still, if we follow the 5-second rule, this is very doable. It's interesting when we sort of explain this to senior management, and again, we try and be as plain spoken as possible. All of a sudden, oh, they get it, and they get much more excited about it. They go, oh, and we've sent, and so it's interesting. The reason we weren't making more traction wasn't what we're saying, it's how we're doing it. And when we showed a simpler, easier way, it actually got a lot of support for that. And so we saw more of that. What else can we do? Do we want to think about merging our records management function with the privacy function? And again, this is going to vary on your organization, the size of it. So what does privacy do? Privacy identifies personal information, it classifies it, it makes sure it's secure, it makes it accessible. So if we need to pull it back, um, retrieve it for a subject access request, we can be able to do that. And then we got to get rid of it. What do we do in the world of records management? Well, we need to identify records and store them and secure them and get them back when we need to, but then delete it when we're done. Now, different drivers, um, same data, same processes. Let's work with other stakeholders. We can build, other common work streams with e-discovery, with privacy, with information security, other things like that, which is, again, why do we want to do that? If you go to senior management saying, hey, I'm partnering with privacy, or in some cases, we've actually seen organizations emerge their privacy in the records program. I know that may be scary for some, and oh boy, we got to work with the privacy folks, so they're going to be nice. Look, we actually find that a very successful many times. It's actually you get the economy of scale, and you get a chance to be able to do more out there. And so we really like, uh, but more important than specifically considering merging these functions, how can I partner? How can I find common work streams? And then when we approach senior management, how can we approach as a team? Because anytime we're approaching as a team, we are going to be really much, much more credible than if we approach them just as an individual and or an individual group or department out there. The other thing you may be saying is, hey, Mark, there's a lot of legwork here. I got to go talk to the privacy and the discovery, the information security, and the IT folks and the business units. And yes, I agree. It does take time to talk to those people. And, oftentimes it's not like your day-to-day job goes away. So it takes but this is just time so well spent. Um, and and again, we want to be careful that we don't approach them defensively, but we approach them openly and understand what they're trying to do and say, hey, let me understand what you're doing. Maybe I can help you with maybe with some common areas, we'll make what you're trying to do is easier. I mean, those are the type of conversations. All right, I got a comment. Having one function and team responsible for RIM privacy and access to information is very common in Canada, particularly at the municipal government level. Um, we're seeing, thank you, Sheila. We're seeing that more and more often. Although the one caveat I'm going to give on there is one thing I am not seeing, although we see a lot of advertisements for this, is the idea of a chief information governance officer, somebody who's responsible, has line responsibility for all aspects of a program. I know some vendors tout the fact if you take this class, you'll become a chief information governance officer. Usually it's a steering committee of people. But again, and it's going to vary from organization to organization. The other thing I'm seeing it lately, a lot of information security groups taking over this function. Um, Again, not only legal, other organizations out there for what we're doing. All right. Organizations are concerned about cost. Again, the cold wind is doing. What else can we do? Let's present ways that we can save money. What can we do on our part to be more cost efficient to save money? And we actually did a whole webinar on this. So we actually have an article and a white paper on this. We talk about more than a dozen ways to save money on a records management program. Maybe that means attacking offsite storage. If you're using an offsite vendor like Iron Mountain or Access, and they've got a very good business model where you take your paper records and store it, and month after month the fees grow and get very expensive, and a lot of that stuff shouldn't be there in the first place and/or should be deleted. They make it expensive to be able to tackle that, but you can actually save some good money, really, really remediating the offsite paper that's there and/or making sure that we're limiting what new paper we add into there. And this is oftentimes a very hard cost savings. Sometimes it's other things. You'll get my opinion on this. We're not fans of renting a records retention schedule. You can, as you all know, you can go to a vendor, you can rent a records retention schedule. They'll provide all these updates. One vendor says you can create your records retention schedule in minutes. Well, you may have a schedule in minutes, but especially over the long run, this tends to be much more expensive, significantly, because they're not bespoke. They're more difficult to automate, difficult to customize. you still have to out validate them. Whole nother talk on that, and you're paying that ongoing subscription. Um, and a slightly self-serving comment, you can hire a good consultant that can build a better, more compliant, easier to execute schedule that works with others that's less expensive um, and costs a lot less money over that. And you own it. I mean, you're not paying fees to be able to do that. And even if you have the consultant come back and update it, it's going to be much less than your subscription. So this just soft areas to be able to do that. Um, Another comment here, once you reduce paper in your company, companies should reduce the amount of secure disposal frequency for the offices will save a significant amount of money. I love that comment out there. Um, yeah, let's look at all these different areas. And by the way, the other thing, I'm going to go one step before that. Let's teach people that they don't have to print stuff out to begin with. You know, a lot of users think, oh, I have to print this out because it's not official unless it's printed on paper. And we know that's not the case. You know, we can store almost all documents out there electronically. It's just a very, very small percentage that we need to keep a wet signature version of it out there. But that's the other thing we want to talk. All right. Um, I've never heard of renting a schedule. Questions on renting a schedule. Yeah, there's some, a number of vendors out there that will rent your schedule for you. There's 4 or 5 out there. We saved approximately $150,000 a year by deleting stuff. I don't know if that was because you went off renting the schedule, did other stuff. If that's either deleting stuff but the fact that you save $150,000 a year, fantastic. Um, Okay, but taking a step back, hey, we are being efficient, we are being smart, we're looking at some of our own practices, we're using technology we already own, we're figuring out cost savings. You're also singing the same tune as senior management. You're with the program, and you're going to get a much better reception to how we can maybe expand it to be smarter. All right, what else do we want to do? And this is a whole nother talk out there. Many organizations are looking at using generative AI. And if you're using ChatGPT, you're using the training data that companies are using, that comes with ChatGPT. You know, the OpenAI looks at all this training data, um, uh, and they get the data from other sources. And there's a lot of litigation. Actually, one of our clients is involved in this litigation. They're a very, very large media company. Um, Uh, but oftentimes the training data coming with this is not very good. And this is part of a longer talk out there. But many organizations are now looking at providing AI with your own data. Maybe you're a life sciences company. Maybe you're a manufacturing and engineering company. Maybe you're financial services. You have lots of data that's much higher quality than the off-the-shelf training data. And if you can feed the large language model through a process called retrieval augmented generation, you can get much better answers. And this is not just for ChatGPT, but this is building your own applications, other things like that. I have one client out there. She's with a 150-person global engineering firm. And the whole company initiative is we want to use generative AI. We want to be smart about it. And she was reporting how records management is suddenly super popular. Why would that be? When you see, the reason is when we're going to feed generative AI data, we want to feed it quality data. How do we feed the high quality data? How do we not feed it the old stuff, the redundant, the trivial stuff? How do we do the data cleanup before we feed it to AI? Do we know anybody in the room that can records management to the rescue? This is a huge record. Data quality is a huge records management issue. Um, and so if we have a better, stronger, more comprehensive records management information governance program, we can enable the company to use generative AI much more successfully, much more compliantly, and much more defensively. This is a big driver for what you're trying to do. Hey, what's your technology team doing with AI? What are all the different groups of people doing? How are they doing this out there? This is all stuff that we're looking for organizations to be able to do. Again, maybe this is a driver, maybe not, but let's put this in our toolkit of maybe messages that we can go to senior management about and talk about what's successful. Um, the other thing that I oftentimes like to talk about is how will this work in a real world environment? Um, we tend to talk about all the processes or policies or technology, and sometimes it's not clear all the stuff that we need to do. And so we often, when I talk to especially senior executives, I sometimes want to paint a picture of, okay, when we do these things, what does good look like? Hey, users only have a few places to put stuff. We don't have to now, have these big complex taxonomy. We can make it really simple for users to know where to store stuff. When users put stuff, we apply all the policies, not just the records retention, the data security classification, the access controls, legal holds, all the policies get implemented, and we can do it all in 5 seconds or less, everything. And when we get data in there, life is easier. It's easier to share. It's easier to collaborate. Um, if we need to do legal holds or subject access request, it's much, at least for the data in our repositories, much, much easier. And we're taking the drama out of getting rid of stuff. The old stuff sort of goes away and we socialized it. So people are more in line with that. And so again, painting that picture in a clear, plain spoken way. And we all, hey, we got this project and we gotta, we have to do records processes and procedures, and we all tendency sometimes to get caught up in these um, buzzwords, and let's avoid that. Let's be as more and paint what it looks like. And sometimes this can get them excited. Oh, I understand what we're trying to do. Now it makes sense. That may free up to expand again. By the way, when we get in this place, we're going to make employees more productive. We're going to reduce e-discovery cost. We're going to reduce our risk of fines, all money things. But they see how we get there. And that tends to be a big driver.
Hey, Mark, we
Um,
have 4 minutes left
okay.
in the meeting.
I'm about 2 slides away. But thank you. Um, admittedly, a bit of a self-serving comment. Bring in an outside view. Um, hire a consultant to do an assessment with you. Uh, do an outside webinar. And I know sometimes people are afraid to bring an outside consultant because they're going to make you look, no, good consultants partner with you. We champion our records managers that bring us in. And we're able to criticize saying, hey, this is not working, it's immature, but we're able to say, why? Well, it's because we haven't invested and we haven't done these things. And a lot of things that, maybe your records management information governance team has been saying, it's very true. And we find this is very typical. It's unfair. We can come in and say many of the same things that you're saying, but as an outside consultant, it has a lot more weight. And we live in an unfair world and it's frustrating, but again, be smart about it. There's a whole nother talk on this that I'm happy to do at some point, but remember, when we're pitching to senior executives, we got to keep it brief. We're not going to have an hour. Plan for your talk for 15 minutes. Simplify down to the key issues. We don't want to get more complicated. We don't want to be more complex. We don't want legalese. We want more plain spoken. Focus on the business impact. How is this going to reduce costs? Or better yet, how is it going to focus on? Remember, we talked about what's the senior executive need and want. What's that? For the one CEO I talked to, it's the deletion of the personal information all over the place. To another CEO, it's the M&A. That was a huge driver for somebody else. And expect to be a conversation. It's a bit of a different skill set to be able to present to senior executives, but follow these guidelines. And really, the final thing I'm going to say is have a strategy. This is not like one thing, do one thing and do this one thing and because what happens is sometimes they'll try one thing and it didn't work and we'll sulk back in the corner. We won't do anything. No, 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 no. Try this. If this doesn't work, try this. If that doesn't work, try this. And this is part of a strategy. Expect that parts of our strategy will fail, and therefore we want to go back and do something else. And so, again, think of this as a bigger picture. And again, I'll go back. This is hard. I don't want to say this is easy. This is really advanced stuff. But if you have a strategy out there, really think about it. One thing that we offer, I do a fair amount of these. At Contoural, if you want to bring in your key stakeholders, I do a virtual in-house information governance seminar talking about best practices, what works, some of the same things I've talked about here. And I've had a number of companies that wanted to, and they use this to pull in the legal, to pull in IT, to information security, data security. I've even done this for, the senior leadership team out there. Not a sales pitch for Contoural. Matter of fact, we can even offer continuing legal education credit for senior manager. It's virtual. It's an hour. We don't charge. It's easy. We don't charge for it. Be able to do that. But if you're interested in finding out more, email me. Doing a lot of these. Actually, I've got one. I did one yesterday. I got one in an hour from now. I'm doing things, but it's a good way of, hey, I've got this person who's done this a lot, very informational seminar, and I can give you references for other ones to be able to do that. And I think I'm almost out of time out there. If you want to know about Contoural, we do assessments and roadmaps. We do the industry's most compliant, most executable records retention schedules. We help with all processes on that. Happy to be able to talk to you more about some of these pieces out there. And we have lots of white papers on this. And we got a webinar coming up on creating a modern records retention schedule. I alluded to that at Contoural, and also creating a personal data inventory. You can use Microsoft 365 to create a personal data inventory. Very cool out there. And then we have lots of other white papers, feature articles, and contents. If you just go to the Contoural website, all out there. I think I got 60 seconds. Is there anything I didn't talk about, or did I blow off one of your questions? You asked the questions, but you're like, Mark didn't really answer that. Please let us know. Um,
I've been tracking the chat, Mark, and I think you did a great job of hitting those as they came in. I know for me, I'm taking away. I heard you say that some of those strategic sessions can count as legal CEUs for folks. So it sounds like a good way to get my legal team in the room and check
oh
off
man,
one of the things on their boxes too.
even if you don't think we'll ever, you'll ever hire us, don't
Yep.
worry about it. Just,
Yep.
I'm happy to go do it. And if something comes of it, great. If not, let's not worry about it. They're easy for us to be able to do. Or likewise,
Wonderful.
if you just want to strategize, hey, Mark, this is what I'm facing. You want to jump on the phone with me with 20 minutes, email me and call me. I'm not so important. And I'm not going to charge you for it. Don't worry about that. And even again, if you're never going to use us, um, mentoring is a big part of ARMA, and to the extent that I can contribute to that, people have helped me for many years, and I'm happy to give back. So let me know. Email me, markdiamond@contoural.com, and happy to um, add that stuff. And I think I'm out of time. I want to be respectful at
Yeah.
the top of the hour, but thank you very much.
We appreciate it so much, Mark. Thank you. I'm going to